I want to tell you about Of Gods and Men, which is a new film by Xavier Beauvoir, which won the Grand Prix at Cannes. You remember last week we had Uncle Boone, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, we had Uncle Boone Me, which won the Palme d'Or. So this is described as being loosely based on the Tiberian tragedy, 1996. I just want to be very clear about the film is loosely based on the life of the Cistercian monks in Algeria from 1993 until their capture in 1996. The story is of a monastery within an Islamic area in which there is a coexistence of the Christian monks and the Islamic people. What happens very, very early on is that there is militia stuff going on around, and the monks learn that their monastery is potentially under threat because the militia want to have them out of there, despite the fact that actually what they do with their time is minister to everyone around, particularly the local residents who are very, very poor, and they minister in many ways, including, most notably, medicine. One night, the militiamen turn up, having apparently just committed some terrorist act, and demand to be looked after and to be and to have their wounds tended to. And the leader of the monastery sort of stands up to them and says, "We don't have arms in here. Obviously, we will try and help you as much as we can, but please bear in mind this is Christmas that you've come." And actually, there's an interesting moment of engagement between the two religious cultures, but the backdrop of all of this is they have to make a decision, which is whether they should stay where they are and carrying on ministering to their flock, or whether they should leave because they are told by the authorities that they are in great danger. The authorities, it has to be said, also are not in any way sympathetic towards them. And in one very important encounter, the leader of the monastery speaks to some figure in authority who says, "Look, the fact of the matter is, as far as I'm concerned, it's your colonialist heritage that has caused all this in the first place. So don't come moaning to me when I'm telling you that you are putting yourself in danger and you don't have my sympathy." Now, that's interesting because when the film played at Cannes, there was some criticism that what the film did was depicted, on the one hand, the monks as wholly good, and and that somehow the film took a stance which was profoundly pro-Christian and therefore anti. I don't believe that's the case at all. I think what the film manages to do, and there's a very, very interesting sentence in the notes describing the tone of the film, which says the film is more interested in capturing the spirit of the events and what was at stake within the community than in recounting the exact details of historical reality. The monks called the army the brothers of the plain and the terrorists the brothers of the mountain. Far from naive, they were aware that they were walking a fine line between the two of these ambiguous positions. Essentially what you get is a drama about people in an enclosed situation in which they have to decide philosophically, religiously, spiritually, whether by their own lights they should stay or they should go. And it is, for the most part, a film about people wrestling with their faith. It is a film in which people have discussions that to some extent reminded me of, you remember in Land and Freedom, there's a point when everything stops and they have a big political discussion about, anarcho-syndicalism and socialism. An awful lot of Gods and Men is the monks very quietly deciding between themselves whether what their mission is to stay and help, or whether what their mission is to go, resting with their own faith. There are many moments in which we see people literally having an ongoing wrestling match with their own belief. There's one monk who cries out, "Do not abandon me," because his faith is failing him. There are a couple of moments in which the monastery is seen as being threatened in one extraordinary sequence by a helicopter which flies over the monastery and appears to hover almost like Apocalypse Now, and the monks respond by prayer, by singing. And some people have suggested that what happens is that there's a suggestion that the prayer and the singing actually drives the helicopter away. I saw it in a completely different way. I just saw it as actually them resolving to accept whatever it is that happens to them. The most extraordinary thing about the film is that for a film in which the action is really, really sort of small detail, I found it breathtakingly moving. And I don't think you have to be religious or you have to have a specific religious take on it. And I incidentally don't think for 1 minute the director, Xavier Beauvoir, whose previous work includes a film about AIDS, a film about Policier, he's somebody who immerses himself in the world in which he is depicting. The film has an extraordinary cast of faces, from middle age to older age. And it spends an awful lot of time, like that documentary, Into Great Silence, which was literally a documentary depiction of living within a kind of, a monastic existence. What you have is this sense of people together in a world which they have created for themselves, attempting great philosophical discussions, somehow having a transcendent discussion with the audience without ever appearing to be doing anything as, you know, as boldly pretentious as that. It's extremely moving. It's beautifully acted. It builds up to a sort of, you know, an inevitable climax, which is done with great sensitivity and great calm. It's an ensemble cast who do not put a foot wrong. It's one of those films that makes you think, you know, I would never, if somebody described that film to me as, you know, this is what the film's like, you think, okay, well, that's not going to be that interesting. It's moving, it's profound, it's beautifully acted, its heart is in the right place. And I think it's really, genuinely exceptional and a late entry to top 10 of the year.